I like my main. I have a couple different things going on, but like my main character, people are like, well, what's the theme? Because that's been a thing over the last 3 or 4 years. It's like on BookTube, it's like the themes, and I'm like, well, my theme is there's always hope. Basically, never give up, and that's kind of Harry Dresden's like there's always hope, and that seems to be the main emphasis running through the Dresden Files. It's like never give up. Good can prevail if people don't give up. I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's how you're wanting it to be, but that's
Oh no, I didn't think a thing. I didn't think a thing about themes. I don't. I don't. I
yeah.
don't. I don't like building themes. I don't like working with themes. I like writing people.
I
Characters.
love that. I love that answer.
Yeah, I mean the theme will get built into it unconsciously while you're working anyway. Just do your work, write the
Yeah.
characters, write stuff that's cool, write stuff that you want to read yourself.
Yeah.
The whole reason the Dresden Files got written was when I couldn't find anything quite like it for myself, and I wanted more. The closest thing to it, I think, was there was Anita Blake, which I enjoyed the hell out of the early Anita Blake series by Laurel Hamilton, and then there was the Amber series, with Corwin, and then later with Corwin's son Merlin, by Roger Zelazny, and those were those were close, but they weren't exactly what I wanted, and I couldn't find it anywhere, so I was like, oh, I'll just have to do it myself. And so I started writing, and I started with Swords and Horses fantasy and sort of stumbled into urban fantasy.
Yeah, I remember hearing you talk about how you wanted to be that classic fantasy
Yeah,
style, sword and sorcerer writer.
yeah. And when I'm a grown up writer, I feel like I'll be able to write a good epic fantasy. You know, and epic fantasies are awesome because traditional fantasies. Oh my gosh, those things have legs. Readers will buy them, and they'll buy new copies of them when they wear out the old ones, and they will grab their friends and shake them until they read them. And the fantasy readers, they are a long term bunch.
Yeah,
So if you can get fantasy books that are on the shelf, you can keep them there a very long time.
yeah. And one thing I think of all the authors that I've read, I think you and Sapkowski do side characters better than anybody. Like like your side characters are like they're better than most people's main characters. And like, so how do you do it? And was it a conscious thing where you're like, these side characters have to be really well thought out and
Uh, no, I mean I just did what my teacher told me to do. I mean, she's like, here's how you build characters, and they would, she would, there would be a list of characteristics. She handed out little worksheets. When you're designing a character, here's how they go, and she said, all right, now if it's a protagonist, you're gonna, in every one of these, under every one of these lines, you're gonna write half a dozen things. If it's a major supporting character, you're gonna write four things. If it's a little side character, you're gonna write two or three things, and if it's just a character that's just going by to help out, just one or two things. Under each of these, these are the words I'm going to associate with the character. Here's the props or actions that are going to be sort of associated specifically with them. And so, and it could be anything from characters as complicated as Murphy, who has several different things, several different traits, several different tags, several different goals, several different ways she wants to be. So you wind up with half a dozen terms under each of those. Or it's somebody like, there's an EMT named Lamar, and Lamar's whole point in the Dresden Files is that he doesn't want anything to do with any of the supernatural. And Harry thinks he's the smartest guy he knows.
yeah.
Because Lamar just shows up as just like, I don't want anything to do with this. Here, let me patch you up and get out of the way because something bad's going to happen around you, Dresden. And all of that is, and he's just like this tiny character, but and I only need to fill out one or two things, but it's just a matter of how much time do you spend on him? How much focus do you want to give them between books? You got to stop and think to yourself, okay, what has their character been doing? How have they grown and changed when they've been off stage? Because the one thing that you have to avoid, you have to stay away from this, and you see it a lot in movies and television shows lately, is this concept of characters who go off screen and don't seem to have been doing anything while they were there. You want to the one thing that you do. Oh, this comment I disagree with. I feel it's very formulaic.
Well,
yeah, I mean that's my thing. That's my feeling. But anyway,
you're like, I have a formula.
Yeah,
you might not see it.
I mean, I use it. I mean, it might not be something that stands out to the reader, but it's well, that's the way it goes, though, right? It all depends on your execution. If you execute things properly, if you execute properly, you do. If you execute improperly, people go, "Oh, it's formulaic, it's predictable, it's terrible." If you execute properly, they go, "Ooh, it's archetypal." And it's just a matter of doing your craft and doing and you know, you set things up, you pay them off. You set things up, you pay them off. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, one thing.
But it's
Yeah,
simple.
yeah. One thing I always tell people who are interested in the Dresden Files, I'm like, it starts off as a like noir urban fantasy, and after about book 5 or 6, you're stuck in it, and then all of a sudden you look around, and it's like being in the forest with the trees. You're like, now I came into this as an urban fantasy. Now it's an epic urban fantasy. Like the world is so big, and there's so much to it. I mean, Dresden is definitely epic now. I mean, there's no getting around it. There's so much to the world, so huge.
Well, thank you.
You're like,
it was a lot of work.
It was like, yeah, it only took me, how many books to make it. Yeah. I mean, is that something that you thought coming in? You're like, yeah, I got you guys. You guys think it's this, and then it's gonna be this. Was that always in your mind?
It was, but so was the idea of I wanted to have a starting point and an ending point, and I knew what they were. And I wanted to get from the starting point to the ending point by building things, a bit at a time, and showing, these are the parts I'm working with. These are the characters we're working with. These are the the political powers that we're working with that are in this book. And so I introduced them slowly, just a little bit at a time as we go along. Plan.